Breaking news coming in. Prime Minister Modi has responded to Donald Trump's remarks. Remember, Donald Trump had come out and said that India and US share a special relationship. Now, Prime Minister Modi has responded to that and said that he appreciates Trump's sentiments and that India and US have a positive partnership. Remember, in the backdrop of this, Prime Minister Modi, in fact, having responded to Trump in his statement said that he was unhappy, however, with the things that Prime Minister Modi is doing, but he said that he does maintain good friendship with Prime Minister Modi. Earlier, Donald Trump had said that it seems that India and Russia are being lost to deepest, darkest China. After this particular statement, there was another statement that Donald Trump had made in an attempt that seems like damage control, trying to mend the tensions between US and India. Donald Trump had come out and said that India and US share a special relationship and that he will forever maintain his friendship with Prime Minister Modi. However, there are certain things that Prime Minister Modi is doing now that he doesn't like, was what he reiterated. Now, this of course comes after the SCO meeting, after Xi Jinping, Putin and Prime Minister Modi were seen displaying unity. After that, Donald Trump had made a statement talking about how it seems that Russia and India have been lost to deep, dark China. After that, he's made a statement about friendship, and now Prime Minister Modi having responded to Donald Trump's latest statement, where he said that he appreciates Trump's sentiments and that India and US indeed share a positive partnership. Now, this of course shows the balancing act that both nations are maintaining their diplomatic ties, at the same time maintaining their firm stance as well. Prime Minister Modi has not responded to any other direct attacks made on relationship with China or Russia, or the imports of oil from Russia. Remember, Donald Trump in his earlier statement as well had said that he doesn't approve of India importing oil from Russia, or in his words, importing so much oil from Russia. And Prime Minister Modi, however, not having responded to that, he did say that he reciprocates the positive sentiments between both nations. Let's quickly listen in to what Trump had to say earlier.
Yesterday in the morning, you did put that out.
I don't think we have. I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia. And I let them know that. We put a very big tariff on India, 50% tariff, very high tariff. I get along very well with Modi, as you know. He's great. He was here a couple of months ago. I always will. I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about. We just have moments on occasion.
Right, my colleague Shivaru joins us with more details. After Donald Trump having said that there's nothing to worry about and that there's just a moment, now Prime Minister Modi, Shiv, having responded saying there is a positive and forward-looking relationship between India and the US.
This is a very real unfreezing of the Cold War between the two countries that has been building in a very hostile manner from America's side for the last 3 months, Aarti. And I can say that this appears to be the big off-ramp where Trump, after 3 months of saying all kinds of very aggressive about India, deploying racist aides like Pete Navarro, I think Trump has realized that India is not moved by being bullied in this manner. Trump, I think, has realized that he has completely cheesed off the Indian people with his bigotry. I think Trump has realized that what this really amounted to was a bull bashing its head against a wall that refused to crack. And he realized that, maybe this brand of diplomacy was simply not swaying India. And I think the cherry on top was the SCO summit where India, the Indian Prime Minister, the Chinese President and the Russian President were seen together. And this must have spooked Trump just a little bit. But to be very serious about things, I think the last 3 days have shown indications that Trump was stepping off that very aggressive pedestal he had assumed for himself and was softening just a little bit. He was no longer saying the very harsh, insulting, deprecating kind of things about India. He was taking a slightly more moderate stance. And this morning's soundbite at that press conference where he says Modi's a good friend, and these are moments in the relationship, it's a very deep relationship, is possibly the most mature and measured thing that Trump has said so far. And it's a 180-degree turn from the otherwise very caustic comments that he has reserved for India, which has shocked people across the world, especially India. And therefore, I think Trump's new sort of outreach to India, a softening of stance, sounding very friendly, being his usual personal, affable self when it comes to the Modi-Trump relationship, I think is indicative of the reality dawning on Trump, that this path that he has taken with India is simply not working. It is probably going to be detrimental economically, diplomatically, strategically in the long run for the United States, because it cannot, play the Indo-Pacific game without India on its side. It cannot play this economic game without the Indian markets, and therefore he has decided that he needs to set his ego aside, perhaps set aside the bullying brand of diplomacy, and maybe resort once again to the personal equation that he has genuinely enjoyed with Prime Minister Modi. And I think that's what this was about. I think, Aarti, this is also indicative, very interestingly, of the back channels really working between the two sides. Remember, on the surface of it, it may have seemed like the two sides have completely lost contact. There has been a breakdown in communication, but that was not true at all. The India and United States foreign offices have been in touch. They've been talking. There has been a constant and sustained engagement, even as on the public face of it, the U.S. president and his aides like Pete Navarro and all the rest of them have said very, very hostile, frankly racist and insulting things about India. I think what Trump has said, which comes just 24 hours after his Commerce Secretary, made another very belligerent comment about India, just shows how sort of semi-schizophrenic diplomacy can be under the Trump administration. But I think it's very interesting and important to note that Prime Minister Modi responding, very, very quickly and affirming India's stand as far as Trump is concerned, deeply appreciating Trump's sentiments at a personal level is hugely important, because that shows you that some kind of an agreement has been reached on the back channel, where both sides have, on the face of it, agreed that, look, this has gone on for too long. There's this outreach from the United States. Let's look at this as a kind of off-ramp to end this phase of hostility and return to the negotiating table as far as the trade deal is concerned. Remember, the trade deal is still on the table. That hasn't been negotiated and concluded just yet. But I think a decision has been taken after Trump has realized the futility of the path that he took, to return to sort of old school diplomacy and try and talk to India in a normal way again, not be, not talk down to India, not be belligerent and aggressive, not be racist, not be insulting of the Indian people, not issue threats on a daily basis to the Indian economy, respect India's sovereignty, integrity, and its autonomy as far as foreign policy decisions are concerned, and therefore try that path. I think that's the real important reading here, and I think Prime Minister Modi has responded as well. This will be, let's be very clear about one thing. It's one thing to look at this whole thing as a kind of slanging match between two countries, but India has been incredibly stoic. It has been incredibly mature. It has not reacted in a knee-jerk fashion. It has not, gotten into the mud and responded in kind to Trump with insulting words of any kind. The Indian Foreign Office has been incredibly restrained and mature, through this entire 3 months, which have been seen by all accounts as one of the lowest points of India-US relations. People have gone ahead and pronounced that it's going to take years now to rebuild trust between the two sides, and that still is very much true. So we shouldn't get swayed by, sweet words and sweet emotions that suddenly come schizophrenically after weeks and months of, hostility and belligerence. But I think the real reading here is that the two sides have reached some kind of an off-ramp to at least for the moment, get a ceasefire going between the two sides.
Thank you, Chef, for joining us and bringing us some context onto this reaction by Prime Minister Modi. I'm also being joined by Gauri Dwivedi as well as Aditya Raj Kaul and my colleague Akhilesh joining us. Let me first go ahead to Gauri. Gauri, now this seems that Prime Minister Modi is making a firm stance that if you're nice to us, we'll be nice to you. But if you bully us, then you will get that in return.
I think, Aarti, what Shiv said right now really sums up the kind of change and the 360-degree realignment that is taking place right now. One also needs to tell our viewers that India so far has had a very responsible, diplomatic and a measured response to the rants that were coming in from the Trump administration. The last 5-6 weeks, Peter Navarro, which really came out with the most racist set of remarks against India, did not evoke any undiplomatic response from the Indian side. That's very important to maintain that, because India was extremely responsible and measured. And I think when after the SCO summit is when there was a lot of realization in Washington that will Trump go down in American history as the president who lost India? I think that's a question that started haunting many people in the Trump administration. And there was a recalibration to that effect. Saner voices prevailed within the Trump administration. And one saw the change in the message that came out from the Trump administration and from Donald Trump himself. And I think that is what the entire weight from the Indian side, from New Delhi side was, which is to try and ensure that responses start coming in when there is something other than the rants. So there were rants that were following for 4 weeks from the Trump administration side. But the moment the American president started seeing things in a more balanced approach, that is when India responded. And look how quickly the Prime Minister responded to the fact that, hey, there are these tensions that have taken place, but the larger India-US relationship stands strong. It stands strong on many legs. Trade is one aspect of it. Political realignment in terms of shared common objectives in the region is the other leg on which the relationship stands. The third and equally important is the geostrategic aspect of this relationship, all of which were being sidelined because of the extremely sharp rhetoric that was coming in from the Trump administration. After that realization happened by American president himself, there has been a very response coming in from India, essentially saying that the relationship is robust, the relationship remains. And it also comes on a day when there's been a lot of talk about how this entire bilateral relationship will move on from right now, from the present trough, so to say, that it is seeing on all fronts, whether it's the trade front, whether it is the H-1B, the visa front, and the fact that about Donald Trump has been going on and on about any alleged role that he may have played in the India-Pakistan 4-day war. So all those aspects is what really drove the two sides apart. But with the olive branch being extended from America, it essentially sets that the trajectory of the long-term trajectory of the relationship is intact. And that is where it is now coming back to.
That's right. Thank you, Gauri, for joining us and bringing us those details. Let me go ahead to Aditya. Aditya, now we've seen this kind of diplomacy, and like Shiv put it, schizophrenic diplomacy coming in from the Trump administration. We've seen his aides earlier as well making a racist comment or something quite aggressive and then going back on it and trying to make a more friendlier a comment like what Besant did, and that's also what Trump is doing. It's something that we could call damage control, but not really. And now that he's made a sort of warmer response, Prime Minister Modi now saying that indeed the India and US relationship is intact.
You know, Aarti, firstly, this is a big win for India's strategic autonomy. This will actually increase India's global standing, and actually India's foreign policy would matter much more because India has stood resolute, India has stood its ground, and India has maintained a very pragmatic posturing. Ever since the tariffs were imposed on India, ever since the sanctions were imposed on India, India maintained its cool and said that they will continue diplomacy and dialogue. They did not, indulge in any retaliatory tariffs. They did not indulge in any kind of a slugfest or a verbal, kind of a dialogue between, both these countries. So as of now, it's a very important statement that's coming in from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where clearly the Prime Minister is emphasizing that both India and US have a global strategic partnership, and has appreciated Trump's remarks where he has called Modi a friend and said that yes, there are hiccups, there are moments between India and US, but they will continue to have good ties. It does also indicate that there has been some kind of a consensus that's been reached. It seems that there is a camp within the Trump administration that has been trying to persuade Donald Trump that it's time to actually get back on the table. It's time to not let a public mockery of diplomacy really take place, at least between old allies, old strategic partners. I also feel very much that the SCO huddle between Modi, Putin, and Xi Jinping played a critical role, because it set alarm bells in Washington, D.C. that are we really losing a very old ally, a strategic partner that plays an incredible role in Quad? And of course, Prime Minister's decision of not going for the UNGA would have, played a role in this as well. But certainly, India's firm and resolute diplomacy playing a very critical role, a very welcoming role for consensus, because since the very beginning of the tariff war, of the sanctions being imposed, and the kind of bullying that we witnessed from Washington, D.C., New Delhi maintained a posture of not just a strategic silence, but also standing their ground and saying that we do not want to indulge in any kind of a mockery or a rant fest, but we want to continue to engage diplomatically from one ministry to the other. So it's a welcome gesture, but certainly we'll have to wait and watch what will be, the targets of the trade deal that could be possibly achieved. We do not have the details yet, but the tone and tenor of the messaging, both from DC and New Delhi, suggests that there has been finally an icebreaker. The entire shadow of the bullying and the tactics that were adopted are perhaps now in the past. We perhaps will not see any more Peter Navarro nasty remarks on Brahmins or against Prime Minister Modi, or the Maharaja of tariff remarks that happened. So we will see some kind of a positive deliberations now taking place from DC, from New Delhi, and perhaps in a few days or a weeks from now, a trade deal also, because that's the kind of tone and tenor that's coming in. A positive remark from Trump, welcomed by the Prime Minister, and diplomats of both these countries will be taking that forward towards a positive direction.
Right, Aditya, stay on with us. Let me bring in my colleague Akhilesh as well. Akhilesh, now like our colleagues were mentioning here, Gauri and Aditya, the fact that Prime Minister Modi or India has chosen to respond at this moment when US has taken a step back, has tried to recalibrate its stance and said, okay, no, we are putting out a hand of friendship, and now India then saying, yes, we do also agree with that.
That's correct, but it will be too early to say anything about Mr. Trump, because what he says today, he may say something completely opposite tomorrow. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi taking a cue from his comments about India being a great friend and Prime Minister Narendra Modi being a great friend. Of course, it shows that India is serious as far as the relationship with the US is concerned. And we have seen that how it has taken decades to come to this stage where India and US are close partners in every sphere of diplomacy. And that is why when this relation was sore, because of the allegedly what Mr. Trump is saying, that India is buying oil from Russia, but he's not imposing tariffs on China, which is the biggest buyer of the crude oil from Russia. It shows very well that there's something behind it. And repeatedly when he said that he is the one who negotiated peace deal between India and Pakistan, and he should be given credit for that. And India was very categorical from the day one that it was Pakistan which actually initiated that there should be ceasefire. So India did not acknowledge that, and that maybe have annoyed Mr. Trump, and that's why all these things have happened. But the key point here is the bilateral trade agreement BTA, for which the US representative was supposed to come to India this month, but he has postponed this. So now we have to wait and see what shape does the BTA negotiations take place. Though there are indications that, like Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has also said that he is hopeful that by fall this BTA may be finalized. And we have to see that how in the GST restructuring also India has taken care of the dairy sector, the farmer sectors, and also the fisheries sector. So India was very categorical that the interests of fisheries, farmers, and the dairy sectors will be protected. This is what has happened. So India has also sent a very clear message that India's interests are paramount and there will be no compromise on that. In fact, in the NDTV Defense Summit, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was very clear. He said that in the diplomacy there are no permanent friends or no permanent enemies. All the interests are permanent, and India will be taking care of its own interests. So now we have to wait and see, because the UNGA, there's no bilateral meeting happening between Mr. Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, because PM Modi is not going for the UNGA summit, and it is unlikely that Mr. Trump will visit to India to participate in the Quad summit. So we have to wait and see what kind of discussion further take place, because this is considered to be very positive development as far as Mr. Trump's statement and PM Narendra Modi actually welcoming it.
Right, stay on with us, Akhilesh. Let me bring in Aditya as well. Aditya, now, in fact, talking about India's diplomacy here, like Akhilesh was mentioning, with Donald Trump, it's like walking on eggshells. You can't really be sure what you're doing. But here, India has played it right with its balancing act on where to act and how to deal with the tantrums, with the tariff threats, and with the unnecessary or unwarranted attacks of racism that had come about from Trump's administration as well. We've dealt with it gracefully and with enough reserve that now they've come out and in fact tried to be warmer.
That's right. Indian diplomacy is Indian diplomacy. It has been welcomed all across. It has been noticed all across. And our diplomats are one of the finest in the world. I mean, look at the Russia-Ukraine war. Everybody was giving us lectures. There was, lectures on democracy, lectures on the war that's shaping and how we need to join the European access against Russia. But India stood firm that India will go by their national policy, will go by in the interest of the people of India, and that would be paramount. Just like Akhilesh mentioned, that we do not compromise. We do not, surrender to diktats or any kind of bullying that comes in. We've faced that in the last 3.5 years during the Russia-Ukraine war, and we have faced that over the last few weeks when the tariffs were imposed and the sanctions were given and the bullying tactics were adopted. A lot of provocation coming in from Washington, D.C., in particular from Peter Navarro and a few others. In fact, only yesterday, the Commerce Secretary also mentioned from D.C. that in a few weeks from now, India will come on the table and apologize. That clearly did not happen. So the Commerce Secretary of Donald Trump had to, eat his words and has egg on his face. The reality of the matter is that with old friends, with old allies, with strategic partners, you need to deal in a certain fashion. There needs to be a dialogue. There needs to be, discussion, and diplomacy needs to play, and there needs to be a way out. You cannot publicly abuse, publicly go, all across against New Delhi at a time you call us, global strategic partners. So that's what New Delhi was trying to say, that we will not be reactionary. There is a lot of provocation coming in. There is a lot of bullying happening, but New Delhi diplomacy is very much clear, very firm diplomacy, the resolve very much clear. And even though there were challenges, even though there could have been economic challenges as well, but New Delhi said that we will bring in internal economic mechanisms and changes that happened in the form of GST reforms, remarkable, changes that have been welcomed from all economists, not just in India, but abroad as well. And then finally, Trump realizing that this is going not in his favor. And once the SCO hurdle happened, the SCO summit was a success. And Putin, Modi, and Xi Jinping came together, not just shaking hands, but also smiling in a friendly banter. That messaging, that kind of a visual really sent alarm bells in Washington, D.C. And there was a greater realization within a camp of Donald Trump, in particular Marco Rubio and a few others, who suggested to Trump that there needs to be changes. There cannot be a one-way highway path of bullying and trying to pressurize India into subjugation. There has to be, dialogue on equal terms. And finally, there's been a complete U-turn from the Trump administration, with Donald Trump, the US president himself, appreciating Prime Minister Narendra Modi, calling him a friend, and clearly also indicating that normalcy could be restored and there is some diplomacy that is at play. So all may not be well yet. There is much more to be witnessed in the next few days and weeks. But clearly, with the Trump statement and Modi's response, there is an icebreaker, and diplomacy will pave the way forward.
Absolutely. Aditya and Akhilesh, stay on with us. Let me bring in Vishnu Shom joining us as well. Vishnu, now this statement coming in from Trump and Prime Minister's response, the big question now is, will it actually translate on ground into tariffs and other contentions between both nations?
Well, I think it's important for us not to be ahead of ourselves. I think it's important to understand that depending on the time of the day, Donald Trump says one thing or the other. At the moment, there is a friendly statement which has been made by the U.S. president. We need to see that for what it is worth. A friendly statement at a particular hour of a particular day. The Prime Minister has done the logical thing. He has responded to that statement. He says, and I quote, "Deeply appreciate and fully reciprocate President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of our ties. India and the US have a positive, forward-looking, comprehensive and global strategic partnership." In all of this, New Delhi never lost sight of the larger picture, that there is this massive global strategic partnership which exists between both countries. But whether this statement by Trump, followed by the tweet by the Prime Minister, is going to end weeks of hostility from the United States to India is something we're going to have to wait and see. And my instinctive reaction in all of this is, let's wait. Let us not link this to sanctions. Let us hope that this is the diplomatic relationship coming forward a little bit. And let us hope that sense prevails upon America to ensure that sanctions are sorted out and that the relationship gets back on an even keel. But I will just remind our viewers and you of where I started off. What Trump says in the morning and what he says in the evening can be vastly different. That being the case, let's be cautious about how we see this and whether it is the end of this crisis that we've had in the last few weeks.
Right, Vishnu, but does this indicate back-channel talks as well, do you think?
That's the case. I mean, there may be some back-channel talks. There may, and I interviewed the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal day before yesterday, and I asked him a pointed question on whether trade talks between India and America, what was the status? Was it essentially off? And he had a pretty conciliatory, friendly message saying that no, there is nothing that is off. You know, I mean, the relationship is important. It exists, and you know, conversations continue. So there is no on or off. You know, the future of the relationship is secure. This is from the minister who, among others, deals with the entire issue of sanctions and tariffs. Then you've got this message from the US President Donald Trump as well, to a question from an Indian reporter in the United States saying that, you know, things will be okay between India and the US. 24 hours or less before that, he said that India was, you know, falling into the sort of grasp or the embrace of China, and good luck with that. Now, if there is a friendly gesture, India is a friendly country, the Prime Minister has replied saying, thank you very much. Yes, we've got a comprehensive strategic partnership. I think that is, for me, the big takeaway over here. The way I interpret this is that second statement by the Prime Minister. India and the US have a very positive and forward-looking, comprehensive and global strategic partnership. This is a reminder from India to the United States that, hello, what are you talking about and what are you saying? This is what we have built. It's something that's been built over a period of 25 years. It is imperative that nothing comes in the way of that being impacted. We have seen ghastly statements from so many in the US leadership, particularly Pete Navarro and others, you know, the White House advisor, saying all sorts of things. You know, India being a laundromat for Russian oil, having all sorts of comments to make on India's import of Russian weaponry. That's something that's never going to go away. These are all remarks which are unacceptable for India. So there is that statement from Donald Trump. Given what we've seen in the last few weeks, let's take it for what it's worth. A statement right now at this time on a particular day, and let's hope that that lasts.
Absolutely. Stay on with us, Vishnu. Let me bring in my colleague Akhilesh still with us. Akhilesh, now, like Vishnu and Aditya were mentioning, the fact that India has responded to this statement again says that we've played our cards right as far as diplomacy is concerned, but again reiterating the fact that Trump's statement today at this moment could vary vastly differently from what he could maybe say just a couple of minutes or hours later. So keeping that in mind, but India has ensured that they're playing the balancing act right.
That's correct. In fact, considering the unpredictable nature of Trump, India is not sure what is going to come next. And that is why we have to be very cautious. Though Prime Minister Narendra Modi, actually welcoming whatever Trump has said about India and about Prime Minister Modi himself. But one point I want to mention that India and US never stopped talking. Even amid this heightened tension and imposing sanctions, India and US were continuing their talks, be it bilateral trade agreement or other issues, but they are continuously talking. That's why, as Vishnu has rightly mentioned, that Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal was saying that he's hopeful that by fall there will be a BTA between India and the USA. And that's why we have to wait and see what turn this India and US strategic relationship take. But one thing is for sure that, the way these pictures came out from China, where Xi Jinping, President Putin, and also Prime Minister Modi were talking to each other, that has sent a very strong message to the USA. And that is why this has maybe, forced him to reconsider his stand as far as India-US relationship is concerned.
That's right, Vishnu. Now, as far as India's achievements are concerned when it comes to diplomacy here, we've managed to not be aggressive again, but still ensure that US comes forward and puts their hand forward per se.
No, I think, and Aditya and Akhilesh bear me out on this. I do believe that the last few weeks have been an incredibly mature phase of Indian diplomacy. Trump, Navarro, and a bunch of others have been saying all sorts of things. New Delhi's reaction has been muted at best, because I think there is a sense over here that if there is, infantile remarks being made on the other side of the planet, let that be seen for what it is worth, as infantile remarks. We have a relationship to nurture. We aren't throwing America under the bus, and we certainly aren't throwing the America-India relationship under the bus. We are autonomous. We value the relationship with Russia. We're trying to fix things with China, but we aren't going to throw America under the bus. Why? Because that is also part of our strategic autonomy. So I do believe the fact that India has been muted is a sign of maturity in foreign policy, where they have gauged, where Trump is coming from, what he's saying, whether he's erratic or not, whether there is any real depth in what his colleagues are saying, his advisors are saying. And now they have chosen to respond. But I believe that the Prime Minister's remark, coming as it does, very shortly after, what the US President's sort of statement of friendship is important. It just goes to show that, all right, fine. I mean, we've heard what you've had to say. And yes, we are there as your strategic partner.